Coming up on Locked On NBA Daily, which star in the Western Conference is under the most pressure this season? Is it about winning a championship? And whose legacy is on the line? It's pressure versus. Plus, we jump into the rotation lab to figure out if the Thunder have lost too much this summer. Locked On NBA Daily starts now.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On NBA Daily. I'm Wes Goldberg. That's Matt Moore and Haize. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Join all of the action at FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer this Major League Baseball season. Excited for today's show because we have our Western Conference episode of Versus. But guys, before we get to that, a bit of breaking news before we started recording here. The Minnesota Timberwolves have also just sold. This is becoming a new trend in the NBA, apparently, where you just sell your teams to new people. Mark Stad is agreeing to buy the Timberwolves and the Minnesota Lynx away from Mark Lowry, or getting Mark Lowry's stake at $4.5 billion. This was reported by Shams about an hour ago. Matt, another NBA sale. It's crazy.
This is, if we count the Lakers twice.
We do.
This is 9 times in 4 years. 3, really. It was summer 2023 when Boston sold. These valuations are all going for record prices. But why? There's a number of questions here. Why are so many owners deciding to get out, even if there's still a market? Like, it's not like you can say the value's crashing, so they're selling, but I worry that there's some sort of cliff, that we're headed towards a cliff here in some regards. I said this on Twitter. This is like a vaguely related point. In February 2020, I was at All-Star Weekend in Chicago, and I was chatting with somebody from the league office. We were just talking about things. I was like, man, I'm really psyched for the playoffs. Like, it's going to be really competitive this year. And that person said, yeah, it's going to be great, if we have it. And I was like, what? And keep an eye on the virus. And like, COVID was a thing. Like, we were talking about it and like started to get a little nervous about it, but like, it was incomprehensible. Like, what do you mean? Like, we won't have the playoffs? And 3 months later, I was like, oh. And to me, it's like instructive of people with money know a lot about what's going on before everybody else does. And I just want to know if the people that have sold, if that's what's going on here. It could be as simple as like, look, they're flipping these franchises for billions. There's also the conversation of the costs. So the P&E, the profit and expense sheet, is in the red because of how much player costs and luxury tax and all of that costs to run the team, while the valuation keeps going up. So you bleed money in the interim. I want to put quotations around this, quote unquote, bleed money, depending on how you finance it. And you're able to then sell it. The other kind of really key aspect here, and I got to shut up, but if you look at how these things are taxed, it starts to make a lot of sense why billionaires are parking their money in it and then moving on. But I don't think this kind of changeover is good for the league, Haize.
Yeah, it's odd, right? Because like it used to feel like NBA teams selling was a rarity. Like, it was a big deal when NBA team, and not to say that it's not still covered in the news, because it is still a big deal. But now it's a little different. Like, it's happening so much more frequently. We're just talking about the last 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. Like, so many teams have just last 3-4 years have been sold. So something's happening. There's something going on here, especially when you look at league revenues going up. They're making more and more money. You think owners would want to stay in, but owners are taking their money and leaving.
In this particular instance, it makes sense for me because we remember Mark Lowry kind of had a hard time with his A-Rod group buying the Minnesota team, right? Like, this had been a thing that went back and forth, that they didn't really have the money to go ahead and buy him. And now he's seeing an opportunity to say, well, I can just sort of cash out on this and make $4.5 billion or whatever is the evaluation that he's going to be making with his share. So maybe I don't know, Matt, there's an interesting point to be made of like rich people know rich people things. But I also just wonder if this is an example of rich people buying teams and then even richer people buying it from them, right? The big fish eating the smaller fish that just ate the smaller fish is sort of what's happening here. It's like a guy owns a mansion and then a richer person comes and says, I'll pay you twice what you paid for this mansion to give me this mansion. And they're just like, it's a lot of money. That's 4.5 billion reasons for me to part with the Minnesota Timberwolves. I just wonder if maybe that's a little bit of what's going on here, is that these are actually good businesses that even richer people want to get in on.
They're good assets. That's
right.
The difference here is they're good assets in particular because you can hold it and not incur tax on it, because it's impossible to you don't get taxed for the valuation of the franchise. You get taxed on income. You get taxed on property. This is all like, there's a lot of stuff going on here. But if you're wondering what is the problem, the NBA has a couple of rules set up, and they have they have said they are trying to avoid things like sovereign wealth funds buying into the NBA, like they have tried to buy into every professional sports league. That's especially kind of worrisome right now, given the events in the Middle East and the uncertainty there. On top of that, they've said private equity only gets 20%. This is Mark's dad owns a firm that is a mixture of public and private. And so the firm itself is not buying the NBA, so it's fine. But they're skirting around all of these rules. And I'm just not entirely sure what to make of it, or if this feels very unsteady to me on a number of levels, because it's like, well, they're still going. It's like, yeah, until the music stops.
Yeah, maybe this is the big reason why this is happening, because in 2022 was when the league made that change where they started allowing those sovereign wealth funds to invest in these teams. And ever since then, now you've got all this money not only pouring in, but just before you even get to the pouring in, available, right? Where they didn't used to allow this stuff to happen, and then the NBA started to allow it to happen, and it just sort of opens up these different kinds of banks. So we'll see. Maybe it doesn't seem like this is going to be the last sale. It just seems like this is a lot of money coming into the NBA, and I guess it's good for the owners because the valuations of their teams go up too, so nobody's going to block these things while they're happening. All right, let's jump into our pressure versus. We are spending today's episode trying to decide which player is under the most pressure this upcoming season in the Western Conference. We did the Eastern Conference in Wednesday's episode, so we're doing the West now. Let's do a quick refresher of the rules. Matt and Haize, they're each going to nominate their choices in the first segment. Then we're going to debate those choices in the second segment, and if they cannot come to an agreement, which they did not on Wednesday, they made me make the choice, I'll come in with the tiebreaker. I have a feeling that's probably what's going to happen again here. I'm going to be asking them both questions about their choices throughout. But before we get to your final nominations, Haize, were you think any honorable mentions that you want to shout out before you get to your final nomination?
Honorable mention, I'll say Ja Morant, because this is Ja's opportunity to show that a change of scenery was right. He's still very young, don't get me wrong, and he's in what's supposed to be his prime. But if Ja can't get it right in Portland, and it looks like more of the same of what we saw in Memphis, I think all that hope that we still see of is like, okay, well, he's dealt with some injuries, he's dealt with some personal things. Maybe he just needs to get his head in the game and to change his scenery. Like, all that, I think, just leaves out the window, and people are just going to look at Ja, who he is now. And that's still, a solid NBA player, but we're so far removed from the talk of people like, oh, he could be the face of the league eventually. So if he wants to regain kind of that, I think that this new start in Portland is really important for him here.
If this doesn't go well, he's likely to be out of the league within 2 years. So this is like Ja Morant's chance to stay in the NBA. Mm-hmm. The guy's got so much money on the line. Like, think about how much Nike has invested in him. Mm-hmm. Hopefully he can get it right. I think Victor Wembanyama needs to be an honorable mention. Yep. People are going to start rooting actively against him. You saw how much Knicks fans turned on him. You saw a lot of fans starting to, like, anybody that's going to be super popular and super dominant is also going to be hated. And you're seeing the turn on Wemby now too. If he struggles, there's just going to be a lot more pressure on, okay, is he actually that good? Going to have to live up to it this season, especially with, playing more minutes. I think that's it for the Western Conference. I almost said Ant, but it feels like he gets another year of a pass.
The big change, right? And it's like, let's see what happens. And then if it doesn't, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I mean, this team was in the finals 2 years ago. They fell short in the Western Conference Finals last year.
I don't think anybody really, I thought about him, but I don't think anybody really blames Shai for losing in the playoffs.
Fair enough.
And I don't think anybody thinks that he's the one that came up short. And I don't think that, and as much as people are like, it's hard to win 3 MVPs in a row. And as much as they're like, there is a big backlash on him with the free throw stuff, but like Shai's also delivered, and Shai's been very good. He wasn't good in that series versus the Spurs, but he's been pretty great. I don't think Shai is facing that much pressure right now.
Right.
But maybe after this year, I think he'd be a candidate.
Jokic is another guy, but we talked this week about, hey, it's kind of on ownership in the front office a little bit more than on Jokic right now too. So we're going to get to your guys' final nominations for our Western Conference Pressure Versus on the other side of the break. Stick with us. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. Just make your free pick for who you think is going to hit a home run in their game, and if you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. Best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the MLB season. Daily Dingers is another fun way to stay engaged with every day's games, whether you're following your favorite team or keeping an eye on the matchups across the league. Every game has someone capable of going deep, and now you get a chance to make your prediction before the first pitch. Sometimes it's a hitter who's been on a hot streak. It's a favorable pitching matchup. Maybe somebody's playing at a ballpark that tends to give up a bunch of home runs. Those are always the first things that I look at before making my Daily Dingers pick. So, are you ready to play your game today? Join all of the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play Daily Dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to Locked On NBA Daily. The best way to support the show, subscribe on YouTube. We are Monday to Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, wherever you get your podcasts. We're going to go to our categories, but before we get to that, let's get into our nominations. Haize, hit me with your Western Conference Pressure Versus nomination. Who are we bringing?
Luka Doncic is the one that I'm bringing to this. I think that with the Los Angeles Lakers, they have rebuilt this team around him. There's no more LeBron here. There's no more that weird transition period anymore. Like, it's you, and like, even though Austin Reeves and Walker Kessler got paid, it's on you to elevate this team and get it to where you need to get it to.
It's a great pick, Matt. Who are you bringing?
You mentioned Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm bringing his teammate, Chet Holmgren, former number 2 overall pick. Won a title, but no one has really looked at him as like a building block. Like, he's not talked about as like one of the best number 2s. He's not talked about like Jaylen Brown. He's not talked about and like any of these other guys. Where would you put Chet Holmgren in terms of the number 2 weapons on most of the teams? He's an insane defensive talent, but he's overshadowed entirely by Victor Wembanyama, and that series is going to stick with him a while because of how badly he got beat up in that series by Wembanyama. And it's hard for me. I've talked about this. That's hard for me to blame him because I'm just like, what do you want him to do against the pterodactyl? But like, that's the charge here. And I do have like a pretty interesting comparison for Chet Holmgren for the old heads, which is Wes. He reminds me a lot of Alonzo Mourning. He's Alonzo Mourning, and Victor Wembanyama is Shaquille O'Neal. Now, Alonzo Mourning's my favorite player of all time. Just my favorite. That's not best, just favorite. And he was immediately the best player on a playoff team. But his entire career, it was like, yeah, Alonzo's great, like awesome, all-star. Yeah, not Shaq. And that to me feels like kind of where Chet's headed. A lot of pressure on him to develop a jumper and actually be able to be somebody who can not only contribute, but help fight back against this encroaching threat from San Antonio.
Does that mean that Chet Holmgren is going to end up backing up Victor Wembanyama late in his career to win his first championship? That's what that means.
2035.
Let's jump into our categories here. We have Chet Holmgren versus Luka Doncic. Who is coming off a more disappointing season, Haize?
I think you got to say Chet in this one, like, just because of the way that the season ended, right or wrong. Like, me and Matt have both talked about why. I do think he's judged a little harshly, but regardless of that, like, he's coming off the more disappointing season because of that playoff matchup, and he's the one that a lot of people are blaming for that. It's not all on him in reality, but he is getting a lot of the blame for that.
Matt, any argument here, or can we just move on to the next category? Because I think it's right.
Yeah, I think it's spot on. Luka's still considered one of the best players in the league. Like, Luka has a shield on him a lot of the time, and that continued last season because of the injuries.
Well, that brings us to this next question. Number 2, who has more at stake in terms of their NBA legacy, Matt?
Ooh, I mean, look, Luka's got a greater legacy, right? No one's expecting Chet Holmgren to be one of these 1A guys. But again, number 2 overall pick, right? Technically higher than Luka. And he is considered to be like on this team that's worth contending. I think a lot of the reason why I would go with Chet over Luka is based off of the expectations. Everyone kind of looks at the Lakers and is like, yeah, I mean, okay, Like, oh, Walker Kessler, that's cool. All right, neat. Grimes, sure. But there's not, like, the Lakers are not considered to be a true title contender. Like, I think most people would not even have them over the Nuggets, despite how much the Nuggets have lost. And you could say, like, Luka puts them there, and that's fine because he is a one-man army and he's incredible. Versus, I think with Chet, look, if he just like slides into just a guy, he's missing out because even with Victor, him having to compare to him, like Chet was billed as one of the most foundational defensive players that we were going to see. And he's being completely overshadowed, is not winning DPOY, is not getting like that kind of conversation, despite how good he is defensively. So I think there is kind of a lot for Chet to prove that he can be a dominant player in this league.
Haize, where are you on this?
I don't disagree with anything Matt said there at all. I think he's spot on there. I don't no notes on that one.
Okay, so we're gonna go Chet the first two categories. Brings us to our number 3 category. How much would a ring change the way that we think about this player? Haize, we'll start with you.
Ooh, I mean, I think for Luka, he doesn't have one. So you're talking about the way that it changes that perception. Like, yeah, he got to the finals in Dallas, and the fact that they got to the finals with that team was great, but he doesn't have one yet. Chet does. So I think that it changes a lot more for Luka because, yeah, he's looked at, and Matt's right, he does have armor around him, but it does something to strengthen that armor when you actually have a title, especially when you do it on a team that's built for you. And so I think it does a lot for him. All the all-stars and all those things doesn't matter. Well, let me say it doesn't matter, but it all becomes a little bit easier to justify when you have that title.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be Luka. I think a better way to frame this, though, Wes, probably to even it out in terms of role. What would a finals MVP award do for both of them? Right? Because I think if Chet wins finals MVP, the conversation would still be about, like, yeah, they won, but like, what happened to Shai? That would be kind of the question versus if Luka wins, it's Luka's finally on top of the world. If Luka Doncic wins the title, he's going to be considered best in the world. Like, he will immediately take that crown. He had a chance in 2024 and then got absolutely obliterated in the finals because that team had no business being in the finals. If Luka were to win, it would fundamentally change everything about why we consider him, because we are at risk of now being like, look, this guy's been favored for MVP every year and hasn't won it. He's been considered this unbelievable, amazing player, hasn't actually accomplished the title win. Made a Western Conference Finals, made 2 Western Conference Finals and the finals, but the context of that, everyone's kind of like, yeah, but versus if Chet won Finals MVP, it would be like, oh, hey, like Chet Holmgren is up there and he is also great, but it wouldn't do as much as Luka winning the title for sure.
How important is this player to his team's success? Matt, start with you and Chet.
That one's going to be Luka.
It's going to be Luka. Okay, we can just move on.
Yeah.
This I think is interesting. What is the social media reaction if this player fails or succeeds? Which way is this going, Haize?
I mean, for Luka, I think it just like we said, I think it justifies a lot of the praise that he's been getting. It acquires a lot of the criticism, at least for a year, if Luka's able to win the title. And even for Chet, if the Thunder win another title and Chet, let's just say for some reason Chet wins Finals MVP, everybody got to shut up. Like, just to be 100% honest, everybody has to shut up with the criticism there. And here's the thing. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility. I won't say that it's likely, but I wouldn't be surprised if Chet can win the Finals MVP if he has a great series, because that's kind of how that team's set up to take advantage of whatever they can exploit in that matchup. There's a complete possibility that could be the Chet matchup depending on who they face off against.
We could see maybe like a Karl Anthony Towns type of performance from him in the NBA Finals.
Absolutely.
OG Anunoby was 1 game away from it. I think if OG has a great closeout game, then OG wins. Brunson just happened to have his best game at the best time. So I do think I would say Chet here, because Chet is only kind of clown. There's not Chet stands, and Luka plays for the Lakers. Luka has Luka stands and Laker stands. So they both combine here. They can, it's the old Office quote from Andy Bernard. Andy Bernard does not lose. He wins or he quits because things are unfair. That's the Lakers. Either Luka wins or things were unfair and it wasn't his fault. He's never going to be held accountable for anything that happens. It's just going to be like, oh, well, it wasn't his fault. Look at the roster. Oh, it wasn't his fault. He was injured. Versus like Chet could have like play on a broken arm and people would still be like, Wemby owns you. What I think Chet has way more at stake in terms of the social media reaction.
So fair. I guess my problem here is that what is success for these teams, right? For success in Oklahoma City, it's winning the finals. Anything short of winning a championship, I think, is a failure of a season for the Thunder. That's not the case for the Lakers.
Nope.
I think being a legit playoff team and having a showing in the playoffs, that's probably a successful year in year one of being a totally Luka team. If you fall short of that, and essentially if you just miss the playoffs or get wiped off the floor in the first round by whoever you play, I could see a lot of people coming after Luka and just being like, you're not that guy anymore. And that would be, I think, the fear on the Luka part of this, Haize.
Yeah. I guess they'll still give him a little bit of time for that, but that is definitely a criticism that could come if he fails yet again.
So do I need to break the tie here, or it kind of sounds like you guys are aligned?
We've agreed more on this one than I thought we would. I'm not even going to.
I'm a little surprised.
That's Chet Holmgren.
Haize, it's up to you. You guys, if you want to concede the Luka, I mean, you guys kind of agreed Chet out of the three out of the 5 categories.
Yeah, I guess.
I think
it still feels weird to say that he's like Chet's under more pressure than Luka Doncic. Like it's just because this team is like I said, it's still like. So yeah, I agree on the points, but I guess I still think like Luka. I don't know, man. I guess the way that I'm looking at this is that if you make it to the finals and fail, who's going to get more pressure? Not just if you don't make it to the finals. But if the Lakers make it to the finals and fail, I think he gets more criticism than Chet.
But I think in that Western Conference Finals, everyone blamed Chet.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
And it's like, I think one of the things that is interesting about this exercise, right, is that probably means we need to recalibrate with Luka Doncic. Are you this good or aren't you? Like,
yeah.
Are you this good or not? And this has been my problem with the whole Luka Doncic conversation for a long time, which is I get labeled a hater. And I'm just like, guys, I'm just trying to calibrate effectively. If we're going to talk about him as one of the 5 best players in the league, right? And we talk about it. We talk about Jokic, Wemby, Giannis, Shai, Luka. That's the big 5. It was the big 4 until this year, and then Wemby crashed the party. Wemby's in year, 4? Luka's been around now. And the other guys have titles. And Luka does not. And Luka's never been part of like a 60-win team. And you could say like, well, the roster and blah, blah, blah. Okay. But like the bar is still the bar here. And if Luka was held to that standard, then I would agree with Haize. But he's not. We make excuses. And we're just like, well, he's really great. It's not Luka's fault. And instead with Chet, who's the number 2, it's like, hey, I'm going to need you to block Victor Wembanyama. I'm going to need you to stop Victor Wembanyama. Yeah. Oh, and also you need to be putting up 25 points a game efficiently.
I came into this exercise thinking that Luka was going to wipe the floor with Chet Holmgren. But you guys talked about it. You guys came to an agreement. It's Chet Holmgren. And I got to say, you're not getting a huge argument from me. So congratulations to Chet Holmgren. You are officially under the most pressure out of anyone in the Western Conference. Have fun with
Congrats.
that. Congrats. It's a lot to shoulder. We are going to stick to the Western Conference, and we're going to hop into the rotation lab to talk about these Oklahoma City Thunder, who have lost some important role players this summer. It's coming up next. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA Daily part of your daily routine and making the Locked On Podcast Network your first listen every day. Stay tuned throughout the offseason. As we cover the biggest stories, we're hopping back into the rotation lab for our final segment, where we take one team and build out its real opening night rotation. And today, we're talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder. Offseason recap really quick, guys. They drafted Ademara and Bennett Sturts in the first round. They re-signed Kenrich Williams and Isaiah Hartenstein, but they lost, and here's the big story, Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, and Lou Dort. Matt, kick us off with the starters.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Cason Wallace, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, and Isaiah Hartenstein. I'm going to assume they're going to stick with the 2 big lineup for now.
Haize, that brings us to the bench guys. Who are the keys off the bench right now?
Man, everybody. No, I mean AJ Mitchell, Alex Caruso, clearly, Kenrich Williams, Ademar.
We're missing guys. So
who we're missing?
Okay, backup point guards, Nikola Topic. They love
Is he?
Topic.
I don't know if he is.
I will tell you for a fact, they
Okay.
love Topic.
You could love a player and not necessarily because they're still playing to win. You think he's going to play over AJ Mitchell?
No.
Okay.
I think he plays it backup 1. AJ is backup 2. Caruso is like the combo because they play Caruso in these.
They play Caruso all over.
They play
the
three
place.
guards all the time.
He's listed on Real GM as a power forward because you can put him on.
He played like 25% of his minutes last year at power forward.
It's
for the
insane.
Thunder, which is crazy to say.
Right. And then you're also missing Jalen Williams, who is still a huge part of their team and has been awesome for them.
Jared McCain is still there.
Listen, I very much so underrate Jalen Williams, and I can admit that.
Yeah, and then we'll see if Sorber can play. They obviously got Mara. I actually think Sorber is more likely to play over Mara. I hated how Mara looked in summer league. He looked completely overwhelmed. I think Bennett Sturts hangs out with the OKC Blue across the street. By the way, like that's one of the great things about being drafted as a Thunder rookie. You don't have to go to some far off location for G League time. Their G League team plays across the street from the arena. Like they literally have guys walk over practice and then go back to there for Blue practice the afternoon.
It's still wild to me that Miami's G League team is in Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
And great, it's a great pipeline.
Right, and among the most successful G League franchise.
Yeah, because look, you want to motivate guys to play well. Nothing better than if you play well, you get out of
the
Sioux
Bulls
Falls
G
and
League
go
team
to
used to be in
Miami.
Iowa,
Right.
so I definitely understand it. We used to split it. It was us and another team that split the Iowa Energy before we had the Windy City Bulls.
I miss the energy. So yeah, like.
Here's the big question though, because they lose Isaiah Joe, who's an important 3-point shooter for him, but I think the obvious backfill there is Jared McCain, right? McCain was already taking Joe's minutes anyway, so it's not a huge loss. But you do lose Lou Dort, who was obviously a top defender for you, and you lose Wiggins, who was a great two-way guy. Haize, who's replacing? Let's start with Wiggins. Who's replacing Wiggins in this rotation?
I think it's they're expecting Cason Wallace to make a huge leap. I think he's replacing both of them.
AJ already replaced him.
Yeah, that's true too.
That's it. Is like AJ took over Wiggins' spot. Like Joe and Wiggins both lost minutes last season. Like their top 8 is the starters AJ, McCain, and Jalen Williams, with Caruso obviously in there too. Like Caruso only plays about 20 minutes in the regular season a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like.
They have to keep him fresh because he can't control himself. He's going to hurt himself if you.
I do think Wessler's a good question here. Of like, look, we know Shai, good defender. He's a plus defender. Cason Wallace, insane defender. Jalen Williams, plus defender. Chet, insane defender. Hartenstein, great defender. However, isn't there a pretty good possibility that OKC's defense is not the, oh my God, way better than everybody else, historically great this season? Because this roster is a lot more offensively balanced when you look at the bench.
I think that's true because look, I mean, in the past you had Cason Wallace, Alex Caruso, and Lou Dort. That gave you the option to have 2 of the best 3 perimeter defenders in the league on the court at all times. And when you lose one of those guys, at least you still have those other 2 guys in Wallace and Caruso. But that means you're going from basically having 2 of these guys on the court at all times to basically 1. And at times they were able to put all 3 of them out there on the court. And so that's gonna defang them a little bit, especially given what they like to do in terms of like full court pressure and half court pressure and all these things. And if you're substituting those minutes with guys like AJ Mitchell and Jared McCain, who like Mitchell's an okay defender, but he's not that level. McCain is not a good defender, but he does try to fight and do things on that end. But you're replacing those minutes with other minutes from more offensive leaning players. I think it's a great call. I do think, but we're also maybe perhaps going to see the Oklahoma City's like offense rise a little bit. They could maybe afford a little bit of slippage defensively if it means that the offense is going to get a little bit more potent. Maybe that's the calculus that they're making right now.
Yeah, I do. There's a consequence to this though. If you have more offensively tilted players, you need more rim protection to cover for them. And the reason I say that is if Chet or Isaiah have timeout with injury, it gets harder to hold those groups up because now you're going to the Kenrich Williams small ball 5 or Jalen Williams at switchable small ball 5. And both of those outcomes, I think, get a little bit more compromised.
Or asking rookies to play big roles on a team with championship aspirations for a while. Which maybe they can, but we don't know that. What does this look like if Chet is playing the 5? What's the lineup there, Haize?
If Chet's playing the 5?
With Hartenstein on the bench. When they get into that, when they toggle into the Chet at center lineup,
It's Caruso.
Assuming Jalen Williams is at the 4.
Yeah, it's probably going to be Alex Caruso.
It's Shea, Wallace, Caruso,
Yeah.
J-Dub at 4 with Chet. That's it.
Yeah.
I think J-Dub's more of a 4 anyway. He's basically like Aaron Gordon light.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you just like shrunk down Aaron Gordon a little bit, that's Jalen Williams. He played 4 a lot in the Nuggets series because they couldn't play 2 bigs.
Yep.
So I think that's probably the answer. It's just like Caruso. It does tell you though, like again, this is part of this is how the cap is designed. This is how the CBA is designed, and this is what's hard about keeping these teams together. Like look at these. You can kind of circle on this team and go like versus before when it was like, oh, if so and so's out, they have 700 guys that can fill in. If Hartenstein or Holmgren are out, this all of a sudden gets even though I love Jalen Williams, this gets a little bit more dicey. And in particular, if Alex Caruso misses time, they are more vulnerable to Caruso injury than they have been in years past.
Or any of those perimeter defenders, to your point, but Caruso's the one sort of with the injury history there. Maybe a last thought on this, but if the goal is now to beat San Antonio, who you lost to in the Western Conference Finals last year, do we think a team that is maybe a little bit more offensive leaning is actually better suited with this spacing potentially to beat the Spurs, or not? I guess anybody can take that one.
That's a good question. Like, why do we think that they lost in the playoffs? I think it was probably because they didn't have enough ball handling, and they were missing J-Dub and AJ.
Yeah.
So I think the answer is probably yes. It helps, right? Because I don't think it's going to be one of those where like I don't think the Thunder defense falls off a cliff. They're still going to be top 5. They probably will still be number 1, but I think it just like the margin narrows a little bit. Like they still beat the Spurs, still beat them. But I look at that Spurs series as more of an OKC failure and injury than I do about San Antonio having figured something out. I think the offensive leaning system here is probably good for that series, but it may be worse for others.
No, I agree with Matt there.
That's going to do it for us today. If you like what you've heard, make sure you subscribe to Locked On NBA Daily on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks to Matt and Haize for their expertise every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network your first listen. We'll see you back here next week for more Locked On NBA Daily.